Welcome to Inside Startup Investing, the only podcast where you can invest in every guest. On this episode, I will be speaking with the founder and CEO of Yarnhub, David Webb. Yarnhub, put simply, is leaning into the YouTube revolution and becoming a stalwart media channel focused on history on the YouTube platform. For parents out there, they are to history and war as Miss Rachel is to kids programming. With more eyeballs watching content on YouTube these days than traditional television, they are building a powerful media and gaming company in this new age of streaming. A few things that I think you should listen for as an investor in this episode are: first, while at first glance, you might think making unique war history content on YouTube could be too niche to be big, consider the fact that this team has over 400 million views a year on their channel and has grown nearly completely through organic viewer acquisition. And oh yeah, right now their content really is very niche, focused on mostly World War II history, with plans to launch several other channels spanning a broader base of historical content, meaning they have a path to billions of yearly views. Second, and this is a new phenomena, this team is thinking about content as a distribution strategy. What do I mean by that? If you know anything about MrBeast, one of the most followed YouTubers of all time, he has since launched a burger chain and a massive chocolate bar company that no one saw coming. Why? Because his hundreds of millions of followers and viewers want to buy his products. Yarnhub is doing the same by launching a history-based game to engage and further monetize its millions of subscribers and viewers who are already engaged and wanting to interact more with Yarnhub. Lastly, this team has real engagement and a rabid fan base. In fact, they were able to sell nearly $2 million in their round from 4,000 fans, true fans. A lot of companies try and get their fans to invest in them, but it doesn't pan out. These guys are really onto something and have built a base that loves what they do and will be willing to spend and engage as Yarnhub builds more channels and offerings like their video game. Seems like there's a long way to run in building a new age media empire. So with that, let's get on to the show and welcome David. David, thanks so much for joining us today.
Very welcome. Very nice to be here. Thank you.
Well, I have to ask you, tell us a little bit about yourself and how it is that Yarnhub came to be.
It's a bit of a sort of series of accidental consequences. I came from a tech background. I worked for Intel for 10 years and then went into the media industry, came up with a startup which was called Timera. And that was an app where you could mix old photos and current day photos, like take a picture with your camera and then mix it with an old photo in the same spot. And it was a great idea, but I think we were a little bit early, and we didn't really know how to monetize it. There was no really monetization of apps when we came out with it, and ultimately it died on the vine, withered on the vine, should we say? But as part of that promotion process, I bought a site called War History Online, which was at the time about, I think, 200,000 visitors a month, and we ramped that up initially as part of the promotion, but then it became very clearly that publishing was the way to go, and we ramped it up, I think, in the end to something like 20 million monthly unique visitors. Launched the Vintage News, which was like a popular history channel off the back of that, and we could see that the publishing business was kind of going down over time, and there was more move on to video. And so 5 years ago, we started moving into video, and then we got an offer for the company. And so I sold the company, and we sold everything apart from the video business, which we then set up as Yarnhub. And we had this vision that we wanted to tell stories which made people feel something, first of all. We consider ourselves goose-bump harvesters. And we wanted to do something cinematic, something that would look better than what was available at the time, certainly on YouTube. There was a lot of very sort of blobby historical content, I want to say. So you'd have sort of like, instead of hands, you have sort of big circles, and they tell a story about World War II and then show a bunch of soldiers in kind of pseudo NATO modern uniform. And we thought, wow, we can do better than that. And so that was kind of how it came to be.
Well, maybe we need to take a step further back. Where did this love of history come from? And is it all World War II? Is it a general love of history?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I've come to it kind of from accident. I find myself, one of the other things I do is I'm on the board of the Tank Museum at Bovington. It's an amazing museum. They have 300 tanks and the only working Tiger One in the world. So if you ever want to go to a museum when you're in the UK, that's the one to go to. But they don't have me for my tank knowledge, as one of my guys who used to work for me told me that I'm not the best historian in the world. I mean, as a kid, I used to read the Commando comics, which my dad used to keep in a little box under the stairs, and I still remember the smell of those. I used to be an airfix modeler, so I used to sort of build Spitfires and BF 109s and that kind of thing. But as soon as I bought War History Online, I was suddenly surrounded by a bunch of people who knew a ton of stuff, and I won't even say I was even close to their level of knowledge. People that are really, really passionate, have been passionate about it all their lives. They don't read a novel on the weekend. They don't go watch a film. They'll read a history book and then move on from there. And I really kind of got swept along with that. And it happened really just by accident. And because War History Online took off so much, and when we were doing these old photos, it was the ones that went really, really well were a lot of the military history ones, obviously. And I think, maybe it was reading these Commando books, so these Commando books, they were like little they were 5-cent comic books. And they'd have sort of some soldier on the front and, looking with a chiseled chin and a beret and, with a big knife and sort of running at the enemy while the enemy sort of screamed. There was a bunch of phrases which the Germans said and the Japanese said. I won't say them. It's probably very politically incorrect right now in the 21st century. But there was that, and also I had Action Man. I'm not sure if you had Action Man. Do you have Action Man in the US?
No.
It was kind of like a big GI Joe, but with sort of grippy hands. And I had the Action Man Scorpion tank and the Action Man helicopter, and there was even an Action Man hang glider, which one of my sort of like childhood traumas was convincing my parents to get me this Action Man hang glider. And I remember my dad, we took it out of the field, and you sort of strap your Action Man. It's about sort of like this big, and you strap him into this hang glider, this big yellow thing. It goes up, and you were meant to be able to release it, and then it would sort of come down to the ground, and Action Man would be ready for the mission. But I remember it only ever flew once. It went up, we released it, it went straight down and smashed into a million pieces. But I guess some of it was just sort of staying from that time. And obviously in the UK, we're surrounded by a lot of military history. Going to France, I grew up on the coast, and in Southampton. And Southampton is where the Supermarine factory was for building Spitfires. And so there was a lot of naval history. My grandfather was in the Navy on one side. So it kind of just seeps into your bones. I think I read a few years ago that the Germans sort of always found it a little bit odd that whenever they went to the UK, there were all of these war films on TV. And I think it probably is a little bit, strange, and we just embrace it. It's like every Easter they would have Great Escape or something like that on TV.
So for those who have never gone to the Yarnhub YouTube channel, tell us what content you would see. What does it look like?
Okay, so we try and tell stories which put you in the shoes of somebody in the past. There's lots of channels which tell stories about battles. They'll say at 8 a.m. This happened, at 9 a.m. this happened, and they're really, really good at that. It's kind of a little bit dry for the average viewer if you're not like an sort of real military history buff. But if that's what you're after, then that really sort of ticks that box. And we just thought that that wasn't what we wanted to do. We wanted to, and maybe it's because I don't come from a military history background. I don't know. I mean, I watch a lot of films. I'm very much into film. And I thought there was a cinematic way that we could tell these stories where you could feel something about the person. And we get a ton of requests. We only do very few stories out of all of those requests. And it needs to be a hero or a main character that you're introduced to, that you feel something about, you feel a connection to, you're given their perspective, and then you follow them through an action. It might be that they have to make a difficult decision. It might be that they have to put down some internal feelings and then move on. We try and zoom in on that while giving it the whole military history facts. We have 3 full-time historians on the team. But you'll get a story. To answer your question, you'll get a story of honor, of heroism, of sacrifice, and at the end of it, hopefully, you'll go, "Oh, that was good." And people say "bruh." I don't know why, but in the YouTube comments, "bruh," BRUH. That's the sign of doing something good. When people look at it and they go, "Wow." And I think for me, the comments that I like most, I mean, first of all, the families of the people that we represent, that they often see these films. And I don't think we've ever had a family come out and say, "I hate what you did." In fact, we just had one just this weekend. That there was the grandson of a B-17 pilot, and he came out and said, like, I was brought to tears. I love what you do. We had Phil Adair. Phil was in the Burma Banshees, and he was an incredible pilot. Flew a P-40 with the shark teeth on the front, just like super cool guys. When you see pictures of these young men just hanging out, and they, and he would like anybody with a car, he would actually sort of pimp his ride, and he put like white wheels on his plane, which he called Lulu Bell, which had this big flaming skull on the front. And the family reached out to us and said, like, we've got a great story, and they gave us the audio of their grandfather telling the story, and we use that in the film, and we're about to do another one on him actually. So, but yeah, it's those kind of stories where it won't be a battle, it won't be like a start to finish engagement. Our films are very expensive to produce, so we have to sort of limit the number of locations, limit the number of people. But that limitation also drives a certain style and charm, which I think appeals to a mass audience.
I think when most people hear this off the bat, and it's perhaps what I thought when I first heard this too, is, boy, this sounds niche. How many people, like, what is there, like 100 people who are into the, right? Like, it can sound like that if you don't fall into the category of being into this stuff. Help us understand, one, what your traction looks like in terms of viewers, revenue, those types of things. Mm-hmm. And then more broadly, how large you see the opportunity in terms of people who could be into this kind of stuff.
Yeah. So, military, it is kind of niche. I think it's fair to say it's kind of niche. But if I look in the last 12 months, I think we've got 5 films which have done over 10 million views. One of them is 22 million views, I think, right now. And that was one that's just went up 6 months ago. We do about 35 million views a month, or just on YouTube. And we have a couple of channels. We have a channel called Blue Paw Print as well, which is, I like to call it, think of it as military tech ASMR. It's, me going very slowly into the microphone. Look at this war machine. It's very nice. It's got, sprockets and stuff. Obviously, I say a little bit more technical detail, but we make it look gorgeous. We explode these tanks up into different sort of shapes and spin them around, and it just looks lovely. But yeah, so we are quite wide in our niche, and we have. I think first and foremost we are storytellers, and we have a channel called Yarnhub Mystery, which we've not been too active on, but we want to reinvigorate it. And it's not military history. There are we've done a few sort of stories about ghost airmen and that kind of thing, but it's just like weird stuff. But we can tell stories. We know how to zero in on people, factual content, and tell you something about what it would be to be that person. And that does have a mass appeal. That's something which everybody wants. Everybody wants to look at an amazing story and then go down the pub and say to their friends, "Hey, did you hear about this B-17 where the tail fell off and it fell into the ground and the guy that was in there survived?" These kind of things, these kind of stories. everybody wants to hear. So I think we're getting. I won't say we're still growing, and we're doing about another sort of 150,000 subscribers a month on YouTube, between 100 and 150, which is incredible for a channel of our age. Most channels, they sort of go through a bit of a curve, but one of the things I think we've tried to do all the time is just continuously improve, and I think that's why we keep getting this growth. So we're doing about 150,000 subscribers a month. So I think probably, if we can get to sort of 10, 15 million subscribers, right now we're 2.3. But it took us 4 years to get to 1 million subscribers. And then it took us another year to get to 2 million subscribers. And now we're doing 150, even close to 200,000 on a great month subscribers. So my hope is within 6 months we'll be at 3 million, and then we'll carry on from there.
And is that word of mouth marketing?
No, we don't
both?
do it's just basically YouTube picking up that we are doing films that people want to see, people want to watch to the end, and then they like them and they share them and they tell their friends about them, and then they watch another film. People sort of say there is almost a content drought for what we do. What's really interesting is we see a lot of families watch the film on TV. So we do. I mean, our films look even better on TV. I think they're 4K, and with YouTube pushing TV right now, I think something like 40% or 50% is on smart TV. As high as 50% on some months, we've had our films on smart TV, which is incredible. And we get a lot of mail saying, I'm sitting down with my son every week. We're watching your films, and they're really great, and they tell stories which are still relevant today. I think the challenge with that, honestly, is that we are telling stories about war, and we don't want to go, yay, war, great. We want to tell it in a raw way, but something that honors the people that were there. And sometimes that's really hard. Like we try not to keep it all about, Americans, even though America's our biggest audience. We've covered German and Japanese. One of my favorite films that we've done it wasn't from a super successful perspective, but just something that I'm proud of how we did it, was we did a story on the title was called When a German Kamikaze Cried Tears of Joy. Okay, so it's a real sort of mishmash. It's like, what's going on there? German kamikaze? Why are they happy? So it's got that whole sort of intriguing title, which gets a lot of clicks. And it was a story of a young man who joined a German outfit called the Sonderkommando Elbe. And the Sonderkommando Elbe were this outfit that they were given sort of old Bf 109s and told to fly them into B-17s, ram B-17s, and attempt to bail out in the process. So it wasn't like, exactly the same as the Japanese, where they were trying to, take themselves out as well as the enemy. There was a nod towards health and safety, for want of a better word. And this chap, I forget his name. He was radicalized when he saw the firestorms from the bombs that were dropped from the Allies on his home city. And he felt he had to do something. And he joined the Sonderkommando Elbe, and he rammed a B-17 successfully. And he managed to bail out. And he saw the B-17, the B-17 was damaged, obviously. Incredibly, he survived this Sonderkommando Elbe pilot, and the B-17 crew managed to land the plane on a German airfield that had been recently liberated, and there was another B-17 that had been recently captured by the Germans. They jumped into that B-17 and took off and flew back to base.
Wow!
And years later, this German chap. He thought all his life that he basically killed an American crew, And years later, they managed to get in touch, or a journalist got in touch, and he realized that they actually survived. And his first reaction was tears of joy because he'd been carrying this guilt with him all his life.
Huh.
And that was, and so we actually try and tell the story in a way that basically says, we don't sort of like go, oh, these. I mean, sometimes we do, but we try not to. We try to sort of put yourself in the shoes and think, well, actually, to understand why these people did these things. That's a super important thing.
Well, first off, how do you monetize it today? What do revenues look like? And how do you 5x, 10x from here?
Yeah. Okay. So YouTube business is a tough business. I mean, there's no doubt about it. It's what you're doing is you're getting access to an amazing audience and making ad revenue on it. So if a film is costing, I don't know, a film like ours could cost something like $40,000, right? We put a lot into it, and that's for a 12 to 14 minute film, right? And you might make sort of 50,000, 60,000 if you're lucky on that whole ecosystem as part of putting that film up. You may not make it back on that film, but you might make half of it on that film and then the rest on rewatches of older films or whatever. So it's a tough business from that perspective. And basically, most YouTubers make money by doing integration ads. So basically ad reads where you sort of say, well, play this game and you'll get 500 doubloons and a free ship and it's available on Xbox Series X and all this kind of stuff. You sound a bit like a medical ad on American TV, where you sort of like have to get all of these words out within 1 minute. And then, at the end, it sort of like says, warning, speak to your doctor if you suffer from heart. So that people usually make most of their money out of that. For us, it wasn't a great deal because, we're looking at that and thinking, it's harming the views of our film because, of course, people switch off when they see those kind of things. And I'd say we were larger than the average YouTuber. So it's very easy to get like a $10,000 deal where somebody will say, okay, we'll give you $10,000 to go and promote our product. And that's fine if you're doing 500,000 views on a video and your video is costing you 5,000 or 8,000. But if you're doing 5 million views on a video or 10 million views on a video and that video is costing you 40,000, then, a $10,000 deal for putting an integration there just suddenly doesn't look so good, right? And you're selling off your audience for very, very cheap in terms of CPM. And so we felt that we had to we knew the value of our audience. We knew our audience were passionate about what we did, and we knew that they would get behind us, because they've been telling us, so often. And that's a great thing about doing this job is the mail that we get is just amazing. And so what we needed to do was to find a way that would, and we figured this out very early on, like 3 or 4 years ago, to find a way that we could use that audience to drive, a proper revenue generating machine. So if you look at, say, for example, MrBeast, he's doing chocolate, and Logan Paul's doing Prime Energy drink. There's a couple of examples I use. Nobody asked MrBeast for a chocolate bar before he did it, or Logan Paul for a sweet energy drink before he did it. Whereas everybody was saying to us, like, I love what you do. I think it's great, and you really need to do a game with those visuals. And we're making our films in a game engine. And so it doesn't take sort of like a rocket scientist to go, okay, right, we're making our stuff in a game engine. We're spending a lot of money doing these great models, doing this rich environments, characters, a lot of time and research and historical accuracy. And we're doing that in a game engine. And all of our audience is saying they want to see this in a game. I would say it was a light bulb moment, but I think the light bulb was always there shining on us. And we were just sort of like, okay, we're not going to look at it right now. Okay, now's the time. And when we got to a certain size, about 2 years ago, I met a friend of mine who's been in the game business for a long time, a chap called Cyril Barrow, who's our head of game now. And I was sort of whispering sweet nothings in his ear, trying to sort of bring him over to our team, because one thing that we couldn't do is come from being a filmmaker, YouTube, and just suddenly go, hey, we want to be in the games, and like the chances of failure on that are exceedingly high. Just like if you want to be a YouTuber, you have to go through several cycles of failure to figure out what success looks like and how to engineer success, unless you're extremely lucky. I mean, I'm not saying it's not impossible, but there's a lot of data analysis, a lot of figuring out, and you don't get that data until you actually go and produce stuff. And, we understand that from the YouTube world, and then put that into the game world. And don't forget, I come from a software development background, so I understand software development very well. We really needed a team that was going to come on board and have that experience. And so when a few things came together, we got to a certain size, quite a decent success. Cyril became available. The audience were sort of clamoring for what we do. We did a few little sort of teasers, and everybody said, you even put like a questionnaire out and said, if we did a game, how many of you would be into it, and what sort of game would you like? And we just got, within I think 24 hours, we got like 6,000 responses and 50,000 likes on this like little social media post, just to sort of tell us exactly what it was. And we had to kind of like take everything, put it into ChatGPT, and said, right, if this was a game, what would that game look like? And it spat out an answer, and that's what we used as a basis for moving forward. You asked about our revenue. Right now, I guess the revenue of just the video business is about $1 million a year. We think we can get that to several $1 million a year just with our channels that we have right now, but we have plans to launch a whole bunch of channels, not just in the military history space. And we want to get to something. I mean, we have a target. It's a big target, but we have a target to get to between 3 and 5 billion views a month. And there are video production companies out there on YouTube which are doing up to 25 billion views a month. So we think with what we can do, that's where we can scale it to.
When I hear it, I kind of hear you're building a modern day history channel for the new distribution, which is YouTube, where, more kids than adult are watching TV than TV, right? Absolutely. And then you're using that brand and applying it to other things they might want to interact with, like a video game, and potentially future products I can imagine as well.
Exactly right. I mean, YouTube, I think, is the biggest TV streamer in the world. I think they serve up something like 6 billion hours of content a day or something like that. And they've been great for us. I mean, we have a YouTube representative in London, and I mean, they've been super supportive of everything that we do. And if we talk about the content business for a moment, I think YouTube, with its desire to go into the living room more and more, it needs higher quality content. It need your prank videos, and those kind of things. They're great for going through on your phone, but that's not going to sort of take that Netflix style experience, which if you're paying for YouTube Premium, you probably want. There's I have a 2-year-old, and we watch Miss Rachel, and when I go to watch Miss Rachel on TV, I go to YouTube. Of course. And it's a great YouTube experience. You just go and click there, and they need more of that kind of content, not just for kids, but for adults as well, where you think, right, I'm going to go to YouTube and I'm going to watch a season, or I'm going to go watch a series. And so we fit right in that sweet spot. And I think, that's part of the reason why YouTube has been so supportive of us. And, we're very happy with how they've done that.
Who do you think, in terms of, when you think about an exit, do you see this being acquired by a larger media company? Has there been moves in the media space to buy content producers like yourself? How do you think about that? Yeah, I mean,
there's a whole ecosystem of companies which are buying YouTube channels, because most YouTube channels, right, it's a couple of guys or a couple of girls, whatever, a couple of people. And what they do is they produce content super cheap, and if they catch lightning in a jar and their channel does really, really well, or if they're particularly savvy and they're great at data and their channel does excellent, suddenly they're in a situation where, right, okay, well, we're 2 people, we've got a content drought, we've got a great system, and they don't really know how to scale that. there's a lot of companies which are coming in and sweeping up those YouTube channels, and they buy them, I would say, relatively cheaply. They usually they usually come in with a promise. They say, right, we'll buy you cheaply. We'll give you a percentage of the revenue for the next 2-3 years, maybe as much as 50%, and we'll give you salaries, and we'll put a whole ecosystem around you to be able to do your editing, your ideas, your thumbnails, and everything else. And we'll just go and drive and ramp this business from being a $500,000 a year business to a $3 million a year business, $5 million a year business. Maybe there's some kind of retail opportunity that you can put around it as well and make it even more. So there's a lot of companies out there doing that kind of thing. We've been approached by several. We've never been a great fit for them. And I think the reason is because we already have that ecosystem of scale. We already have 40 odd people producing films for us. And it's difficult to think like how somebody would, I come from a professional background. I've got a bunch of people in my organization that do the same. We're always looking for like, okay, where can we scale? How can we make this a little bit more efficient? It's difficult for somebody to come in and do that with our setup because we're coming from that. We're approaching it from a professional outlook from the get-go. So we're not a good fit for that, and that's okay because the valuations on that are pretty low. So with what we're doing, and I think the potential for what we have right now, we think we can get to several hundreds of millions of dollars worth of revenue on game, and the game industry has got a bit of a problem right now, and it's acquiring and retaining users, and that's what we have an audience, right? I just saw there's a whole bunch of gaming companies out there which everybody says gaming is hard and all this kind of stuff, and it is true. It is hard. I'm not taking anything away from it. But if you look at a lot of gaming companies which start up, try and develop, and then fail. There was one I read today that had been going for several years, had several $1 million worth of funding from big VC players, and they had 13,000 wish lists on Steam. I don't want to sort of go into particulars, but several thousand wish lists on Steam. But it's a fraction of what we have, and we've just been up now on Steam for 3 or 4 months. And we've got 40,000 wish lists, and growing several thousand, every week. So I think our strategy is to be the biggest gaming company with the smallest marketing budget. Because if you're a gaming company, you're spending about 80% of your revenue or 80% of your raise even on marketing, and we're not going to do that. We're gonna spend our money on the game, and so. Going back to what you said, we're now being approached by publishers, games publishers, to sort of see if there's a fit. And that's another interesting conversation because what games publishers usually do is they go to a developer and a games developer and they'll say, okay, we like what you're doing. Can we take? We'll give you some money to finish the game, first of all. Good, but we want to take the IP and we'll find an audience for your game. And in return, we'll take 50% of revenue or something like that. When we go to our publisher, I say, well, okay, we've got an audience, and now we've got the money. So what is it you guys are bringing to the table? And it's a good conversation because they're thinking about it, and we're coming up with potential options there. So I think there's a few options open to us. Number one, a publisher could acquire us. That's not my preferred route, but I would certainly take a look at it. I think if it helped us achieve our goals for our shareholders, then I would definitely consider it. But we would love to get to IPO. We would love to get to be, $1 billion valuation and go to IPO.
Well, let me ask you, so in terms of this capital raise, is pretty much all the funds being applied to developing the game? And then if so, what's the timeline on game launch? And could you give us an outline of what it'll look like?
Yeah, so we closed at 2.1 with this crowdfunding round that we just did. In actual fact, if you look at the settled funds after the event, because there was a few things that were very odd about our raise. We had, I think we had 4,000 investors at the end of the day,
Nice.
and more than 50% were overseas. And that caused a whole lot of issues with international bank transfers. When I say overseas, I mean non-US. Sorry, I should be clear. And that caused a whole lot of issues with international bank transfers. We had a lot of people with money sent back and this kind of thing. So we ended up with about 1.8, I would say. And then after fees and everything, you sort of like 1.65 or something like that. So our target was for 2.2 before we went with the fees. So that would give us 2 years runway with a development team, plus 6 months contingency. So yeah, I mean, to answer your question very directly, yes, all of the money's going on the raise. It gets us to, going on the game development, should I say. All the money's going on the game development. Then there are a few things like, capital expenditure and stuff like that, and backfilling animation team that are moving on the game. So there is a very small slice which is covering both game and production, but it's all going on the game. And the current release date, we're just actually about to do our first play tests right now. We've got, I think we've got 7 people working on the game development right at this moment. And the plan is to get 2 levels, multiplayer, in production within 2 years. That's the current plan. We're already multiplayer in play tests, so I think we're doing quite well. That's not going to be the whole game. $2 million is not a huge amount of money in the game development world. So the plan is, what we'll do is we'll get to a point where we can get great statistics, maybe even revenue, and good retention. And then at that point, we'll have to do another raise in the VC community. And that raise is probably going to have to be something in the region of $15 million to get us to the next level with the game.
I'll give you the last word here. For those who are interested in what they've learned here today, who are kind of on the line, what do you want them to know? What should they hear from you?
I'd love them to go to our Steam page and wishlist and follow Brass Rain on Steam. The biggest delight I get is when people see our work and they say, bruh. So what would I like them to know? I'd like them to go along to our channel, Yarnhub on YouTube or Blue Paw Print. Watch something which catches your eye, and if it makes you feel something, let us know.
If you like what you heard on the show today, you can check out why Yarnhub received a 4.6 out of 5 and an investment from Kingscrowd Capital at kingscrowd.com. Their round is not currently available, but stay tuned for their future raises. And please like, subscribe, and share our podcasts wherever you listen to podcasts so more listeners like you can find us. Thanks.